Excellencies, dear colleagues, good morning to who is in person at the International Environment House, and good morning, good afternoon, or good evening to who is with us on WebEx or is now watching the video of the event. The Geneva Environment Network has the pleasure to welcome you today for what was our regular chemicals and waste briefings to update you on major negotiations on this topic with the key stakeholders running the secretariats in charge of the related meetings. Geneva plays a key role in stepping up efforts to address the pollution crisis and the sustainable use of hazardous substances, with the presence here of the 4 Chemicals and Waste Conventions administered by the United Nations Environment Programme, as well as its Chemicals and Health branch, and the strategic approach on sound management of chemicals and waste beyond 2020, or SAICM, all present with us today. But also in Geneva, we can count on other key UN system organizations and secretariats supporting efforts to limit our exposure to toxic substances and tackle pollution that are not on this panel, but do support the work of the institutions present here. This chemicals and waste briefing will provide an overview of the work and key activities to advance the sound chemicals and waste management globally. It will present the latest information on the important conference scheduled this year. Some already took place and some are coming up soon. Before we proceed with the opening remarks of this event, a quick comment on the pandemic. With the move towards normalcy in Switzerland, almost all the remaining measures have been lifted at the United Nations Secretariat in Geneva, effective from next week. The United Nations Geneva premises will return to normal occupancy. We have been doing efforts in making our event hybrids and hope to inverse the current trend, which is 10% of the attendees in the room and 19% online. The future is hybrid, and I am myself talking to you from outside Geneva today, but we hope to see you more numerous in person if conditions allow, because we like to meet you in person. Coming back to this event, a quick reminder for those who are online with us, you can raise your questions by using the Q&A box, which we will address in the Q&A session of this event. For the welcome and introduction of this event, it is now my pleasure to give the floor to both Monika Stankiewicz, the Executive Secretary of the Minamata Convention on Mercury, and to Carlos Martin Novella, the Deputy Executive Secretary of the Basel, Rotterdam, and Stockholm Conventions, in the absence of Rolf Payet, who finally couldn't make it today. And Carlos will be moderating the event in this session, so I will let him decide who takes the floor first. With that, I wish you a great event.
Yes, thank you so much, and good day to everyone present in the room and also present online. I'm very happy to brief you about the outcome of the Minamata Convention COP that was held just several weeks ago. And in fact, I would like to brief you on the 2 segments of the Conference of the Parties 4th meeting, which was held in 2 parts in November last year and in March this year. The second segment was held in Bali, in Indonesia, and it was in-person meeting with some online presence. And I'm still very grateful to many parties who made an effort, despite some challenges, to come and to be present in person in our meeting. But I'm also grateful to those parties who were prevented from coming due to COVID for their active participation through online platform. The arrangement for in-person negotiation with online participation is something new that we have tested, and based on the feedback I received, I can tell that it went very smoothly and very well. And even though we were still having a meeting under the circumstances of COVID, we were also glad to see that this did not disturb the proceeding of the meeting, and the meeting was held in a safe manner. And this is very much thanks to Indonesian hosts who put in place a number of effective measures. And overall, the meeting was wonderfully hosted by Indonesia. This was really a pleasure to be there. I'm also glad that our Conference of the Parties was held just after UNEP 5, so we could be informed of the outcome of UNEP 5 in a timely manner. Let me then brief you on some major decisions made by the Conference of the Parties, and my colleagues Claudia and Isaac will give you some interesting details of it. So first of all, the Conference of the Parties adopted a decision on international cooperation, and that decision will ensure that the Minamata Convention will be an integral part of the global collective effort to address the triple planetary crisis of biodiversity loss, climate change, and chemical pollution. And more specifically, the decision includes recognition of UNEP and its recent resolutions. And the Secretariat is tasked to continue gathering knowledge about, raising awareness of, and demonstrating the contribution of the implementation of the Minamata Convention to other relevant international regulations and policies, including those related to pollution, biodiversity, and climate change. The Secretariat has also been tasked to prepare a report with possible recommendations on how the Convention could contribute to the post-2020 global biodiversity framework once it is adopted, and we know that the COP is planned to be held in the third quarter of this year in Kunming, China. And there was also another separate decision made by the COP to continue our good collaboration with BRS Secretariat. So we also received a continued mandate to collaborate based on the recognition of the good outcomes and good activities that we have carried out during the last 2 years. Let me maybe also, why details again will be provided by my colleagues. I would like to really proudly say that the COP managed to achieve one of the major outcomes, and this is to expand the list of mercury-added products to be covered by Annex A of the Convention. Several new products were decided to be listed in this annex, which means that the import-export manufacture will be phased out, and the agreed deadline for phase-out is 2025. And the parties also agreed to continue the discussion and to consider dates for some additional entries to this annex at the next COP, COP5 in 2025. As you may know, listing and phasing out products based on Annex A is important because according to the Convention, the existing primary mercury mining is still allowed, but this is only for certain, or mercury from such mining is only allowed to be used for the processes and products that are allowed by the Convention. So there is a close link with ensuring that there is a less and less use of mercury that comes from primary mercury mining. And let me also mention that there was a major decision related to dental amalgam, which again also links to the, or will facilitate how we can able to track the mercury trade in the future. As a conclusion on that item, let me mention also that the outcome, I think, exceeded expectation by many. And I'm really grateful to parties for the initiative to put forward the proposals to amend the Convention and also for their active engagement in the negotiations, which will overall ensure that the Convention remains relevant and up to date and reflect the realities on the ground. Some other major outcomes are related to effectiveness evaluation, and also continuation of important work on a number of technical issues, such as releases of mercury threshold, and also the guidance for preparing national plans for artisanal small-scale gold mining. Also, for the first time, gender was included as a standalone item on the agenda of the COP. And next, Secretariat will prepare the gender action plan for the Convention, where we will be drawing also from experience of our sister and brother MEAs, where such a work has already been done. Let me also here mention the fact that also thanks to the discussions by parties during the 2 segments of the COP, we can now see a very good and successful outcome of the GEF8 replenishment process. From the beginning, from the Secretariat and from parties, this was definitely a prioritized process, and I'm very grateful again to parties or council members for consistently prioritizing chemical and waste as a subject to GEF8 replenishment, including Minamata Convention, and we now see that there is an increased allocation, increased pledges to the chemical and waste, and also to Minamata Convention in particular. So we are very hopeful and looking forward to the launch of the GEF8 period. Let me then conclude by informing you that as upon Indonesian initiative, there was a Bali Declaration on combating illegal trade in mercury introduced during our COP meeting. This is a non-binding political declaration which received a widespread support from regional groups and delegations during our COP. Illegal trade is naturally very important. It's a challenge that parties are currently facing in many parts of the world. So the declaration sheds some light and put some focus the topic deserves. And I hope it also allows or brings this attention in the context of future COPs and future activities parties may wish to undertake under the convention. With that, let me finish and thank that and say that I'm looking also forward to BRS COPs, which will be also for us, Minamata Convention actors and relevant and interesting events to attend. So I think with that I can finish and hand over to you, Carlos. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Monica and Diana. I will make some short opening remarks on behalf of Rolf Payet, our Executive Secretary of the BRS, who is today in a mission and in a location without connectivity, before I take my role as moderator of this meeting. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, good morning to all. It is a pleasure to welcome you all to this chemicals and waste briefing, which provides us with an opportunity to fill you with our work and connect once again with all of you. In particular, it is an opportunity to brief you on the outcomes of the work and the key activities that have been carried out recently, as well as on those upcoming activities planned for the coming months in the field of chemicals and waste. And in particular, those carried out under the access of UNEP, BRS, Minamata Convention, and the SAICM Secretariat. You have been already briefed recently about the outcomes of UNEP 5.2, and now we had a short briefing about the outcomes of the Minamata COP. But I would like to take the opportunity today to brief you in all the range of other activities that are taking place here in the organizations and institutions based in Geneva on chemicals and waste. I'll also take the opportunity to welcome all our panelists who have joined us this morning. That will take their time to make the short presentations. Ladies and gentlemen, regarding the BRS, despite the many challenges faced over the past 2 years, the BRS Secretariat continued to work non-stop, ensuring the continuity and delivery of our program of work, among others, organizing all meetings in virtual format. As you may have seen, we are making the fast transition back to face-to-face meetings. Early this month, we held in Nairobi the face-to-face segment of the open-ended working group of the Basel Convention. And in just over a month time, on the 1st of June, we will be hosting the high-level segment of the 2021-2022 meetings of the Conference of the Parties of the Basel, Rotterdam, and Stockholm Conventions in Stockholm, Sweden, in connection with the Stockholm Plus 50 International Meeting. And the face-to-face segment of the COPs will be held just 1 week after the high-level segment here in Geneva from the 6th to the 17th of June in the International Center of Congress. I will expand further on this topic since my colleague David Owen, here with us this morning, will brief you on these preparations for this high-level segment and this COP more in detail. However, I would like to take the opportunity to extend to all of you a warm invitation to actively participate in the BRS COPs in June and to encourage your ministers and high-level representatives to attend the high-level segment of the COPs in Stockholm, Sweden. Our agenda for today is quite full. However, before giving the floor to my colleagues, I would like to take the opportunity to thank you on behalf of the BRS Secretariat, all the missions present here today, as well as your governments for the support and active participation during our meetings and other activities during this year, which are key 4, successful continuing and to enhance the cooperation and coordination among the Basel, Rotterdam, and Stockholm Conventions at the national, regional, and global levels, and thus contribute to addressing the root causes of the triple planetary crisis we face today, namely pollution, climate change, and biodiversity loss. I trust you will find this briefing useful for planning your work ahead. Thank you for your attention. And now, taking my role as moderator of the meeting, I would like to give the floor to David Owen, the head of the governance branch at the BRS Secretariat, who will brief you about the preparations for the high-level segment and the Conference of the Parties to the BRS Conventions in the coming few weeks. David?
Thank you, Carlos. And as they're putting the presentation up, I think it is up. I just to say first that I will not try to cover every word of these slides, but they are also meant to be a reference for you later, so they will be available on the GEN website. So, as Carlos mentioned, I'm here to talk about the upcoming face-to-face meeting of the conferences of the parties of the Basel, Rotterdam, and Stockholm conventions. As we've all done, including Minamata, we've had to break up the COPs into two segments, really three, as we have a high-level segment as well. But the first segment was an online segment that took place in July of 2021. And now following up from that, we'll have the face-to-face segment from 6 to 17 June, and that will be in the Geneva International Conference Center here. So the agendas were actually adopted at the online segment, but pretty much all the other items are still open. The theme of the meetings is global agreements for a healthy planet, sound management of chemicals and waste, and you can see the website. You can find this link from any of the three convention websites or from our Synergies website. So just to give you a quick lead up to the COPs, we've had we've had two of our four regional preparatory meetings. The first was the end of March, back-to-back with the Minamata COP 4.2, and the second was in April, 7 to 9 April, and that was back-to-back with the open-ended working group of the Basel Convention. And so that's sort of what has happened. The budget documents were sent out in March, and the other documents were made available on 6 April. Looking ahead, next week, I know Carlos and others will be going to a meeting in May for the GRULEC region in Montevideo, and that will be done back-to-back with the SAICM meeting as well to be held there. And then the following week, there'll be a meeting in Prague for the Eastern European regional group. And again, that will be back-to-back with a meeting of SAICM. So very briefly, I will not cover every word here, but the idea behind this particular open-ended working group is to try to sort of pre-consider some issues that would be considered at the COP itself, and they made quite a bit of progress. One was they were actually able to agree on the adoption of the terms of reference for this follow-up partnership to the PACE, which is the partnership on action on computing equipment, PACE. And then there was a number of different technical guidelines that we do under the Basel Convention, which are really obviously voluntary mechanisms, but they're really designed to help parties and others to manage waste in an environmentally sound manner. And so you can see a number of these were actually, they got to the point where they negotiated and they actually recommend a text for adoption by the COP. Others, they worked on the texts. They weren't able to get to that point, but what they had, the progress they made, the idea is to recommend that as a basis for further discussion at the COP. So there was quite a bit of progress made at the OEWG, and hopefully it will help you to get a lot of progress and actually get a lot done at the COPs. So these are just there was a follow-up letter that was sent out looking for feedback in a number of areas, and on the strategic framework, and the technical guidelines on ESM on plastic waste, national reporting, and the plastic waste, as well as on the Basel Partnership Program in general. And you can see that some of the deadlines for comments were very short. So a couple were the end of this week in effect, and the rest would be in 13 May. And then we'll be compiling these and then making these comments available to the COP itself. So I won't go through these again. These were just the regional preparatory meetings that I mentioned before, and you can see the venues, the pictures of the meetings that did take place, and the ones that are still to happen. Of course, we don't have a photo yet. We can imagine. Okay, now this is something that is a very interesting development that normally high-level segments we have sort of right with our 2-week COPs. This time there was a really great opportunity, and it was really something that promoted by the Bureau of the Joint Bureau of the Basel, Rotterdam, and Stockholm Conventions. And that's the idea of a high-level segment, which would take place the 1st of June this year in Stockholm. This is in connection with the Stockholm Plus 50 meeting that will be held the 2nd and the 3rd of June, but this would take place on the 1st in the afternoon as an opportunity to raise awareness on the contributions of the BRS conventions to the 2030 agenda and to tackling the triple threat that Carlos just mentioned. But it's meant to be an interactive, dynamic platform of ministers and other high-level representatives. And so we've had many registrations. Registration deadline is actually coming up soon. It's the 30th of April, 2022, but we do recommend those parties and others who have not yet signed up that they would register before the deadline. And though the program will be available soon, and those are the reference numbers, so you'll be able to find it on the website. Okay, so now I'm going to turn to the COP itself, and this is the 2-week marathons that we do every 2 years, although this time it's going to be this year, and then we'll have to do it again in 2023. So it's going to be a lot of work between now and then. Key documents, of course, are the tentative schedule that I will show you. There will be there'll be pre-meetings on the day before. That's 5 June, and these are normally the bureau meetings, and the regional meetings take place on that day. There will also be this. And part of this, and I'll show you when I get to the actual table of the meeting, is that it involves sort of joint sessions of the 3 COPs, as well as face-to-face. I mean, face-to-face, it's all face-to-face, as well as focus on the individual technical issues of each of the 3 conventions. And so the good news is, in the middle of this, there will be a day off, which is on Saturday in the middle. Before it was on Sunday, but at least one of the presidents was very clear that it would be better to have that day off when Geneva is a bit more open on the Saturday than the Sunday. So I'll just go through quickly. This is the schedule of the first week. Sorry, thank you. I'm working off 2 screens here, one for me, one for you. As you can see, it will open on the Monday morning, and we'll have the usual speeches and regional group statements that will be made. Of course, we'll have to keep them very short, given the time going through the organizational matters. And then we'll actually take up one of the joint issues, which is on POPs waste, since it affects both the Stockholm and the Rotterdam and the Basel Convention. It's important to start that up. And at that point, we'll actually establish the technical contact group under the Basel Convention to begin working when it can over the course of the period a bit later. And then in the afternoon, we'll continue with the Basel issues, looking at the rest of the technical guidelines, and then those would also be referred to this technical working group under the Basel Convention. And then we'll look at legal clarity, and under that there are a number of proposals for amending the annexes to the convention, which can significantly influence, of course, the scope and the specificity of the convention itself. So at that point, we would expect that then there would also be the contact group on legal matters under the Basel Convention started. So we'll have 2 of the 3 Basel Convention contact groups established well before the rest of the Basel issues are addressed. And then in the afternoon, then this is another key as we look at the listing issues under the Stockholm Convention. And again, we'd expect a contact group for that. So as you can see, the Monday is going to be very frenetic in terms of speed. So it's really important to get things set up early in a process like this so that work can begin in contact groups. The rest of the weeks, 2 weeks, will not be quite so crazy, but the Mondays always are. Then we get back to joint issues. You can see what's covered there: technical assistance, financial resources. This is key. This will be another joint contact group that will be established on those 2 issues that morning. So if you're keeping count, we would then have up to 4 contact groups established. Then we would have program of work and budget, quick introduction to that. And then a 5th contact group, another joint contact group, would be established on the program of work and budget of the 3 conventions. And then a discussion of the MOUs between the conference of the parties of the 3 conventions and the host organizations of the conventions, being UNEP. And in the case of Rotterdam Convention, it's UNEP and the Food and Agriculture Organization, FAO. And then we get into the afternoon. I'm not going to go into a lot more detail, but you can see the issues that we'd cover. We're getting into the specific issues under the Stockholm Convention. And then we again have another joint session on the Thursday morning, on the Wednesday morning, back to Stockholm in the afternoon. And then Thursday would be all day on Stockholm Convention issues. In plenary, I'm talking about. Contact groups, of course, can also be running during plenary. And then we start switching gears to the Basel Convention, where we come back to issues related to the Compliance Committee. And then there's an amendment proposal from the Russian Federation and any other sort of issues that need to be caught up on at that point. And then we finish with any remaining decisions under the Stockholm Convention, adoption of the Stockholm Convention report, followed by adoption of the report of the joint sessions that took place. Because we actually have to produce 3 meeting reports since it's 3 conventions. And so there's a part of the report that's specific to the convention, but for all 3 reports, they will, in a sense, include the joint sessions as part of their reports. So it's a bit of a complicated puzzle, but but we found that it does work, and I think over time parties have become more used to this. And then, as I said before, the Saturday is a day off. And then we continue with the Basel Convention issues. You can see them there all through the day on Sunday, and then on Monday morning, and then we start up with the Rotterdam Convention in the afternoon. Expect a contact group on listing of chemicals to be established, and possibly one on compliance. There was a newly established compliance committee under Rotterdam, so that there could be some working contact group on that as well. And then we come back to the Basel Convention on Tuesday morning to review the draft decisions. And then we go back to Rotterdam in the afternoon, and you can see the issues that will be covered there. And you see how it plays out the rest of the week with more work on Rotterdam on the mornings, and actually on Wednesday afternoon we finish up with the convention-specific decisions under the Basel Convention, and then on Thursday afternoon we deal with the decisions that are joint to the three, except for the budget, which will have to take longer because the budget group has to take into account all the decisions that are taken in the meeting so that they ensure that they are factored into the budget. And then Rotterdam specific sessions would end on the Friday morning, the last Friday morning, with adoption of the report. And then in the afternoon, then there really is the adoption of the three budgets, as well as then the closure of the meeting. And it's a lot, but I can say that 4 years ago we were able to end on time, which was rather amazing. But I think in 2019, I think we were closer to midnight when we finished. So it's a very hectic agenda, as you can see. But it's three conventions, and it's only every other year. So, and it really helps the cohesion between the three. I won't go through these again, but this is just a list of the possible contact groups that would be established over the course of the meeting. And I have 5 minutes. Thank you. Yeah, so I'm not going to go into a lot of detail on this, but it is important, obviously, that parties have an opportunity to participate in the Conference of the Parties. So the deadline for registration in order to receive this funding was in 25 March of this year. There still is a possibility, I believe, for late registrations, but of course they end up being a lower priority given the limited funding. And the financial assistance is for up to 3 delegates per government, 1 for each convention to which that country is a party to. We very much appreciate the financial support from China, Denmark, Finland, France, Germany, Norway, Sweden, and Switzerland for participants' travel. It is quite a bit. And I think that's about all I need to cover on that slide. These are important COVID-related issues. For now, there's no travel-related restrictions in place to come to Switzerland or in Switzerland. Participants are to familiarize themselves with the travel restrictions in their country of origin, including transit countries. And we do encourage you to also include on your delegations members of your permanent missions here in Geneva, in case for whatever reason you have challenges in getting here. And then at the meeting venue, and this is still to be confirmed, it's sort of a moving target, although the restrictions are getting less and less. And a reminder that we don't only follow the Swiss requirements, we also follow the guidelines of the United Nations here in Geneva. But what we were really looking at, and our own sort of sense of what it takes to ensure that we have a safe meeting. And so we're looking at daily rapid antigen tests, wearing masks, at least except when you're speaking like I am now, or eating, obviously. And then offering possibility for pre-departure testing, PCR sort of testing, if you have the requirement going back to your country so that you don't have to go find a place in Geneva. That will be there. But that, of course, is at the cost of the traveler. And of course, we strongly recommend vaccination. Credentials. This is of course part of the meeting. Sorry, thank you for reminding me. And that the credentials are to be submitted by the head of state or Minister of Foreign Affairs or head of government, and they're to be made to the Secretariat 24 hours after the start of the meeting. It's a bit more complicated than that, but given the time, models of the credentials have been made available in the 6 languages. And of course, we appreciate advanced submission where possible. Just to mention that there are a lot of officers that need and members of subsidiary bodies that need to be elected at the meeting. And so there are leads within each region that will actually be the focal points for collecting the nominations. And at the end of the 2-week period, the whole slate is is elected. So I'm not going to go through this other than to point out that according to the financial rules, representatives of parties whose contributions are in arrears for 2 or more years are not eligible for any of these positions. So it's very important. It is still possible to arrange for a payment plan. And if that can be done with the executive secretary, then we're in good shape to make you available, make it possible for you to become a member, for your representative to become a member of these groups. I'm not really going to be able to go through any more at this point. Just to mention, there are side events that are available at lunchtime in the evenings. There's a plastics forum that will also take place in the venue from 8 to 10 June. I won't go through these other than I just advise you to go through these slides. You can see the various key issues for the Basel Convention, the Rotterdam Convention, and the Stockholm Convention. So there's a lot going on. And so please have a look at the slides. The documents are all on the web, so you can get as deep into this as you wish or have time to do so. And there's also joint issues, including the budget, which of course is a key component of this. And with that, I will say thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, David. Well, as everyone has seen, there is been a good presentation on what is the process of the preparations for our COPs on the BRS and the high-level segment. But when going into the substance, better you read first the slides that will be distributed and go to the papers, because it's quite a very important amount of decisions to be taken in, hopefully, in these COPs. So in the benefit of better management of time, we will leave the questions and answers for all the presentations, but at the end of this session, and we move now straightforward to further briefing from our colleagues from the Minamata Convention on Mercury. So we have first Claudia ten Haver, who is the Senior Policy and Coordination Officer of the Convention. Claudia, you have 5 minutes.
Thank you very much. We'll, with your permission, take 10 minutes, but Isaku will also be speaking. Isaku, my colleague, of course, the Senior Program Management Officer, also with us at the Secretariat. We are 2 in arms here.
Yeah, I was going to give 5 minutes to him afterwards, but you can join forces.
Perfect, perfect. In that spirit, and to complement what Monica has given you in terms of information on our COP, we have prepared a couple of slides. There are 8 slides. Of course, they're available to you afterwards for you to distribute and also to come back to us with specific questions should you have any. So taking us to we won't count this one as one, but the first slide, the next one, as of course, our COP was convened in 2 parts, the one virtual or online and then in person. We wanted to just give you a highlight of the number of people that came to Bali to be with us for our first COP outside of the duty station, and our first COP during, or hopefully we can soon say after, COVID. We had a very, very good turnout, despite, of course, even restrictions still at many national levels, and we're able to have more than 600 persons part of the COP proceedings, and more than 300 of those with us in Bali. Of our 128 parties, 110 were part of our proceedings, and this was very important, of course, for the development and further development of the convention. We have, of course, lots of facts and figures of who was there, but of course it also includes that non-parties attended. We hope they will soon become parties, as well as NGOs, international organizations, and other groups and actors, including indigenous peoples' representation, which was very important to us. Moving to the next slide, and you may have seen a version of the slide before, because this is, of course, how we look at all the work that we need to be doing within the Minamata Convention to indeed fulfill the obligations and provisions of the conventions. And you can see here, COP by COP, how we are progressing forward. And COP4 had a specific set, had many issues, in fact, in front of it. Principally, the first one, Monica mentioned it, was that our COP decided that they were ready to review and amend possibly the convention with additional products and even to look at also additional processes. And this was a very complicated and complex process also in the lead up to the convention, to the COP meeting, but this was one of the key items on our agenda. You can see one beneath the rest, the other items, they also relate to releases, to waste, to customs code. We again had ASGM on our agenda. The guidelines that had been first put forward by COP1 and had been used were now revised, updated, and adopted formally by the COP, which is a very important also mark in terms of how important ASGM is for our community and is in terms of emissions for what Minamata stands for. We will go in a little bit more detail in some of that, but just to give you the overall frame that, of course, some of the work had been prepared in previous COPs and some work had been prepared specifically between COP3 and COP4. And I will speak to you a little bit about the effectiveness evaluation, as that was a longer term project that had been started and had been bit by bit put in place over the past 3 and now the 4th COP. With that, let me take you to the next slide, which might appear quite small on your side. I do apologize, but it's just to give you the overview of all the decisions that were taken by our COP4. We had 2 decisions taken at the online meeting last year that relate firstly quite procedurally just to the actual dates of our in-person meeting in Bali, but also our budget for 2022. And this was a very important achievement for us, as it was not an easy context to do such an important piece of work online, but it was imperative, of course, to do so. But in Bali, we adopted, the COP adopted another 12, and 2 of which Isako and I will speak to you shortly. The one are the amendments, the other one is effectiveness evaluation. But you see there, of course, the ASGM releases, thresholds, and so forth. And as Monica also outlined, international cooperation and enhanced cooperation, or continued and enhanced cooperation with our colleagues in the BRS. Just below is the link to the Executive Secretary notification that has gone out on the 18th of April. Please have a look at that. It's quite an extensive document. It goes step by step in terms of each decision, what was in the decision, and now what is the follow-up required. And in some cases, there are nominations due quite soon, in fact, for some of the groups established, or for renomination of some of the groups already working with their new mandates. So we do urge you to look at this particular document in detail. Having said that, of course, we hope that our meeting report will be out very shortly, but this document right now is your best roadmap of what we need to do coming out of COP4. And with that, I would like to now hand over to Isako to just speak to us a little bit about the outcome of the review and now amendment to our convention. Isako.
Thank you, Claudia. And I'm going to speak a little bit on the specifics of the amendment of the Annexes A and B, and review and amendment of Annex A and B. The Annex A is about the multi-added products, and part 1 of Annex A lists the product types that the parties need to phase out, the manufacture, import, and export. The current listing start with the batteries and switches and then lamps. And the top 2 listing is about lamps. One is the compact fluorescent lamps, which can be replaced with the bulb type LEDs. And the second one, the CCFL and EFL, used to be used in computer backlights and so on. And the listing includes other measuring and other devices such as strain gauges and male pressure devices, vacuum pumps and tire balancers, and also it includes photographic film and paper and propellant for satellites and spacecraft. The part 2 of Annex A provides for measures other than the phase out of manufacture and import and export, and it currently list the dental amalgam. The parties agreed to stop the use of mercury in bulk form, and only the dental amalgam should be only be used in encapsulated form, and also parties agreed to stop the use of dental amalgam for children under 15 years old, 15 years, and pregnant and breastfeeding women. So the next one is not about the amendment at COP4, but the decision, the COP4 decision, what the COP will come back to at COP5. With regard to Annex A, the COP decided to discuss the phase-out dates for batteries and switches and relays. And the sentence here is very long, but in essence, it is all batteries and all switches and relays. And the bottom two listing is about linear fluorescent lamps. And also with regard to Annex B, which is about the processes in which mercury is used, the part 1 of Annex B is about the manufacturing processes that parties should phase out. And the COP decided to consider the listing of polyurethane production in part 1. And also the COP decided to come back to the issue of other two processes that are listed in current part 2 for COP5 to be able to discuss, consider whether alternatives are available, warranting the phase out of these processes. With this, I'm going to come back, hand it back to Claudia.
Thank you very much, Eisaku. And as Monica said, we were particularly happy about the depth of agreement on this particular item, because 8 products being agreed for amendment and also a commitment to work on another 4 in terms of the timelines at COP5 definitely exceeded our initial expectation of what parties would be ready for at this stage. I would like to then go on to the next decision, which was also one of those key decisions and key areas of work for COP4, and that is the first effectiveness evaluation of the convention. As you know, and as we've learned also from the Stockholm Convention, to do an effectiveness evaluation of a convention is a key mechanism through which the convention learns about itself, through which parties learn about whether the convention is indeed able to fulfill its mandate, and if not, what to do next. And so this particular provision is really important for the long-term validity and the long-term stability of work that has been committed to by our parties. And as such, it has taken COP1, COP2, and COP3, and now COP4 to put in place the arrangements for the first of this evaluation. And the decision is quite lengthy, but in essence, firstly, and most importantly, it was important that the COP agreed before 2023 on the beginning of the first effectiveness evaluation. And so we beat that timeline by being able to have the first effectiveness evaluation in place now, 2022, with not only a framework agreed, but also the establishment of an open-ended scientific group to begin work to lay the scientific foundation for this important evaluation. Furthermore, there was also agreement to continue work and conclude on the indicators for this evaluation, and also to consider the terms of reference of another body that will be in charge of writing the overall report, that is the effectiveness evaluation group. Let me just outline or point your eye to the bottom of that slide, because there is work ongoing already, both by the Secretariat and will also be with the group and others on 5 reports/report and plans, which are all input to the effectiveness evaluation. With that, all that remains are 2 very quick slides. One, to give you a snapshot of each of the highlights of the other decisions for you to peruse at your own time and to perhaps go to. But here are just some of the snapshots of what the COP was able to achieve there. And if you were not able to join us, or if you were able to join us, would like to go back to memory lane, please have a look at our fantastic videos that were produced at the end of each day. That gives you a flavor, not only what happened in the negotiations, but also very importantly on the sidelines, including with many stakeholders. Our videos are all available there, as is a whole lot of other communication material that has been produced both with the Secretariat and with others such as ENB and etc. And lastly, just to point your eye to the picture here where you see our outgoing COP4 president hand over our very famous Japanese dolls as a token of stewardship for our next presidency, which is Romania. And we look very much forward, of course, to working with Romania for COP5, which will convene towards the end of next year. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Claudia, Isaku, and Monica again, and congratulations to all the Minamata Secretariat team for a very successful COP. It was a pleasure to observe that there on site. And well, after the successes in Nairobi with UNEP and the successes in Bali with Minamata, we have a level to match, David.
Right.
So now I would like to pass the word to Sandra Beru, who is the officer in charge, head of the Knowledge and Risk Unit of the Chemicals and Health Branch of UNEP, who will tell us what is going on in UNEP Nest. Please, Sandra, let us know.
Thank you very much, Carlos. And well, a lot is happening in UNEP. Maybe as speaking just after the Minamata Convention colleagues, I wanted to highlight how we value the work and the cooperation with the conventions. And just today, the global forum on ASGM is taking place, and that's just one of the many examples of this cooperation. So I'm very happy to be here today and to present the follow-up to UNEA 5.2 resolutions. So we had UNEA resume session taking place in March in Nairobi, and I wanted to highlight a few of the resolutions and the follow-up work to this. So I would start just by highlighting that UNEA 5.2 has been taking a large number of decisions and resolutions, and many of which I will not be speaking of today, but I wanted to highlight the linkages with the chemicals and the waste cluster, including, of course, the resolution to end plastic pollution, and moving towards an international legally binding instrument. There are also the mineral and metals management resolution, or one that is not in this slide, the circular economy and sustainable consumption and production resolutions that all have very tight links with chemicals and waste. However, I'll be focusing with the ones where chemicals is present, including in the title, mainly the three that are circled here. The resolution 7 on sound management of chemicals and waste, also called Omnibus Resolution, which is covering a number of topics related to chemicals and waste, and resolution 8 on science policy panel to contribute further to the sound management of chemicals and waste and to prevent pollution. And I'll briefly touch upon the resolution 6 on biodiversity and health with the linkages with antimicrobial resistance. So just to highlight that this resolution 7, the omnibus resolution, has 4 sections, and I will only cover the last 3 sections because my colleague from the Minamata Secretariat will be, from the SAICM Secretariat, Nalini Sharma will be covering the first part. The first section I'll be covering relates to the international integrated approach to financing, where the resolution reaffirmed the importance of this integrated approach to financing of sound management and chemicals and waste, spoke to the GEF and encouraged donor of the GEF Trust Fund to continue and enhance support to sound management of chemicals and waste, as well as extended the special program for 4 years. And this slide is to highlight the extension of the special program on institutional strengthening for the chemicals cluster. It has been extended and it highlights the total contributions and pledge that we've had to date. Obviously, the need for further funding to support its extension, and in particular to support the in-country projects to support institutional strengthening in governance for beneficiary countries. The second part of the Resolution 7 I wanted to highlight is related to issues of concern. And UNEP has developed a report as a follow-up to a resolution from UNEP 4 on the assessment of issues of concern that pose risk to human health and environment. And I've listed the issues of concern here in the slides. They are both those that are considered emerging policy issues under SAICM, as well as issues where emerging evidence indicates risk, as highlighted in the Global Chemicals Outlook 2. Further to this report, member states urged member states and invited other stakeholders to take action to reduce or eliminate the risk associated with the issues that are put forward in this table, and requested the executive director of UNEP to seek views on priorities for further work, as well as on potential future further international action. So we will be conducting in 2022 this gathering of views from the different stakeholders, and we'll be preparing a summary analysis for consideration by the Environment Assembly and by other international bodies. So certainly a number of these issues relevant to the Beyond 2020 on chemicals and waste, but also to the conventions. And these are the other requests to the ED that were highlighted in the resolution, including the update of the State of Science and Endocrine Disrupting Chemicals 2012 report in cooperation with WHO, including also presenting a full range of options to address asbestos, contaminants in products and the environment, also in cooperation with WHO. We also had a request to work closely with other members of IOMC, and currently, actually, Monica could not be here today because she is meeting at the same moment with the IOMC members, and we had a discussion with a number of them already yesterday. And the cooperation with relevant multilateral environmental agreements. And we very much look forward to continuing the contributions to the BRS Secretariat and to the Minamata Secretariat work. Finally, there were two additional mention of UNEP work and areas where we're currently developing and implementing the work. One is the UNEP Green and Sustainable Chemistry Framework Manual and its executive summary, which were requested at UNEP 4. And we're working towards the operationalization and implementation of green and sustainable chemistry. And the second is a reference to the adverse impact of pesticides and fertilizer and the joint initiative with FAO, WHO, and UNEP on highly hazardous pesticides. On the science policy panel, we have a resolution that is extremely ambitious and agreed on the establishment of a science policy panel to contribute further to the sound management of chemicals and waste and to prevent pollution, with a request to organize a first open-ended working group by 2022, so this year, and to complete by the end of 2024. There are some lessons learned on, and while we are working on the exact dates of the first open-ended working group, there are some lessons learned already that I highlighted in these slides, in particular the importance of involving industry, as well as the need to engage academia and civil society from the start, mainly as lessons learned from the IPBES. The head of the secretariat has been appointed, Kevin Helps, and we look forward to supporting the advancement of this work. And finally, I'll just briefly highlight a topic related to biodiversity and health, which is the antimicrobial resistance. And it's my pleasure to inform that UNEP has joined what was called the tripartite on the topic, so now the quadripartite with FAO, OIE, and WHO. So we have a joint roadmap, a joint strategic roadmap, a joint trust fund, and we'll be implementing projects aligned with this roadmap. So it's really a concretization also of the cooperation with other UN agencies on important topics. And thank you very much for your attention, and I look forward to the discussions.
Thank you very much, Sandra. As with all the previous presentations, it's such a wealth of substance behind each slide that is very difficult to run through all of it in the short time available. So maybe in the future we have to rethink how to organize these chemicals briefings. The activity on chemicals is increasing in such an exponential way that that is very, very impressive. Now we will move to have a briefing about the SAICM activities from Nalini Sharma. Nalini, you are online, I can see. So you have 10 minutes. Thank you, Nalini.
Thank you so much, Carlos. And good morning, everybody, colleagues and participants. I would like to now give you a quick update on where we are in terms of the SAICM Beyond 2020 process. So as we are all aware, the Global Chemicals Outlook second edition, the independent evaluation that was conducted under the SAICM auspices, the key finding was that the 2020 target was not achieved. Some of the key outstanding challenges that were identified were to reduce the widening gap between developed and developing countries, to ensure national level political buy-in into the process, and here really strengthening the multi-sectoral, multi-stakeholder engagement, sharing of information and knowledge, securing stable finances and resources. Really a key challenge is how do we improve the monitoring framework to better assess the progress that we're making, and then the continuation of addressing emerging policy issues. As many of you are aware, the fourth meeting of the intersessional process and IP4 and the fifth meeting session of the International Conference on Chemicals Management, ICCF5, were postponed, originally taking place in October 2020 when we were meant to conclude our discussions. Due to the pandemic, both these meetings, key meetings of the intersessional process, were postponed. These meetings were expected to address outstanding challenges and deliver more ambitious, robust successor instrument to SAICM. As mentioned by Sandra, one of the key resolutions that was undertaken at UNEA 5, approved at UNEA 5, spoke around the SAICM process and, amongst other issues, invited all stakeholders to put in place an ambitious, improved and enabling framework to address the sound management of chemicals and waste beyond 2020. And this provides us a very much needed momentum to push ahead to a successful IP4 and ICCF5. So with the unexpected postponement of our key meetings, it gave us time to reflect on a way forward on the interlinkages between the chemicals management agenda and other global processes. It also encouraged us to think about new ways of continuing the momentum by engaging stakeholders in this new reality. So the Bureau and SAICM stakeholders during the time of the postponement came together. They agreed to establish this virtual working group process. 4 virtual working groups were established, and their aim was to develop proposals for tangible outcomes, including notes identifying gaps, text proposals, suggestions for new or alternate text. It was made very clear that the virtual working groups are not intended to replace the formal face-to-face discussions at IP4 or the negotiations that will take place at ICCF5, but rather to build a better understanding and prepare the delegates for the foreseeable negotiations. So next. Many of you might have been involved in the virtual working group meetings and the process itself, but I thought I would provide a quick update in terms of outcomes of or the key outcomes rather of the virtual working groups. So the virtual working group 1 on targets, indicators and milestones agreed that there needs further deliberation to develop the draft targets using a smart approach before extensive work can be dedicated towards the indicators and milestones. On governance and mechanisms, the virtual working group looked at how governments can establish arrangements such as national action plans. So there was national action, regional and international action. The really, I think, a key aspect that needs also further deliberation is on the multi-sectoral and multi-stakeholder engagement and how we can strengthen that going forwards. And then there was a proposal, of course, put on the table on the mechanisms to taking stock of progress and some other areas in terms of the reporting, linkages, etc. Virtual Working Group 2 also considered the science policy interface, and there was strong support for strengthening it. And I guess now that we have the resolution that was approved at UNEA 5 on the science policy panel, SAICM stakeholders will then deliberate on how they will be engaging with that process and through that panel. On issues of concern, Virtual Working Group had broad agreement on that the emerging policy issues and issues of concern process has been very useful in raising the impact on specific issues globally, but a clear action plan is required in order to assess the progress in a more coherent and effective way. And finally, Virtual Working Group 4 on financial considerations acknowledged that there is a need to elaborate the integrated approach to financing of sound management of chemicals. As you may be aware that the integrated approach to financing of chemicals and waste was approved at UNEA 1, and this is being further elaborated under the auspices of the intersessional process. Perhaps just a quick update on where, what the SAICM Secretariat with the stakeholders have been working on during this period of time. So enhanced work has been done on the EPIs, broadening our knowledge management, as well as expanding our partnerships on technical and scientific networks. And this is ultimately, mainly being done through our GEF SAICM project that we have that's currently running and will conclude and be completed by next year. The SAICM Secretariat also intends to work with the GEF on the upcoming GEF 8 replenishment and the special program on its 6th and subsequent rounds of applications. So this is really about trying to get the countries to be able to access the funds, as mentioned by Claudia earlier, and others, that the GEF 8 have increased their funding considerably under the chemicals and waste focal area, and for SAICM, the increase has been substantial. It's from 12 million. Now we have received, or we will receive 65 million. So it's very, very great news for us, I think. And there, the focus of where we need to put our focus needs to be identified, needs to be discussed across the board. And then, of course, we've had the continued provision of the Secretariat services in the lead up for the intersessional process, supporting the Bureau and ICCM 5 presidency, etc. You might also know that David Moran had stepped down as the IP co-chair, representing the WEOG region, and we have really great news that the WEOG region has nominated a replacement, and Kay Williams from the UK has accepted this post, and this information has been communicated to all our stakeholders. So just maybe going a little bit into details around the activities that we have been undertaking. As a result of the SAICM GEF project, there have been some commendable achievements, and this includes 16 countries passing lead paint legislation and 21 paint producers in 7 countries that have been supported to phase out lead in paint. I would also like to highlight here that we had a very good feedback from the midterm evaluation. The project was rated highly satisfactory, and this is quite a rare rating for such a complex full-size project, indicated by the evaluator. And I think this really goes to all the hard work and efforts that was done at national level by the different implementing organizations, etc. So it's really excellent results. To further broaden the partnerships and SAICM multi-sectoral approach and stakeholder approach, the Secretariat has also been working with ICCA, with the European Chemicals Agency, UNEP and UNITA, by spearheading a global pilot project focusing currently in Africa for 4 African countries to aim to increase the implementation of the globally harmonized system of classification and labeling of chemicals, so GHS as we all know it. The project's being funded by the European Union, and also support is being provided through ICCA. In terms of we have developed an e-learning course on industrial chemical databases and information sharing, and this has now actually been deployed onto the Informea platform. We hope information has been shared to all of the SAICM stakeholders, and please encourage your constituents as well, people that you know, and I will put the link into the chat box. Please do take the e-learning course when you have some time. I think it's a very useful, informative, and it provides a good understanding of what information and databases are out there in terms of the industrial chemicals. The SAICM Secretariat was also involved in developing a study on industry involvement for the integrated approach to financing of sound management of chemicals. You may recall that an evaluation was undertaken for the integrated approach to financing for chemicals and waste. That information document was presented to UNEA 4, and one of the key findings there was that the component on industry involvement was fairly weak and it needs further strengthening. And so this study was undertaken in consultation with many of the SAICM stakeholders. Interviews were undertaken, and it will be available in the coming weeks on our website, and we will also share the links and further information with all our colleagues. And then finally, in the program of work and budget that was approved for SAICM for the 2022-23 through the silent procedure, one of the activities and outputs that was supported was developing a capacity building strategy. Parts of, so this is now going to be supported by funding from Health Canada. Issues such as the clearinghouse mechanism, issues such as the monitoring of progress and doing some research around what kind of platforms can be used based on experiences with different global initiatives, etc., is being undertaken, and this will be part of the development of the strategy. So once a plan is put forward, we will then also have ways of consulting, having review periods, etc., for this key work stream. We are now kind of back on track, on the road towards IP4. As Carlos mentioned or David mentioned, that we have a couple of back-to-back regional meetings that we are having with the BRS regional prep meetings. The first one takes place next week, 6th to 7th of May. The following week will be in Prague for the Central Eastern European region. Africa regional meeting dates now and venue has been agreed. We're just now doing the final paperwork to get the meeting venue in place. And for Asia Pacific, we're just finalizing the dates and venue as well. IP4 will take place from the 29th of August to the 2nd of September in Romania. And we really thank the government of Romania for their continued support and interest in hosting this important meeting. So we look forward to your active engagement in this process. The next slide just gives you some links of our website. We have information updated on a regular basis, so please do feel free to look and also follow us on Twitter, please. Take care. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Nalini, for your presentation. So we are looking forward to see new developments under SAICM and the celebration of this important meeting in Romania at the end of August. So now we'll move to the part of the meeting on questions and answers. I will take first any possible questions from the room, and then Diana, you can help us if there's any question posted online. So any question from the room?
There is a participant who raised its hand, but didn't put the question in writing. And so I'm putting the person on the stage in case the person wants to take the floor because she raised her hand, or he. It's a she. Yes, please go ahead.
Thank you for the wonderful introduction. I'm Linda Wang from China Biodiversity Conservation and the Green Development Foundation. And thank you for all the preparation work and the webinar and the briefing. Several days ago, we have sent the site event proposal for BRS, which will take place in June. I wonder when we'll have the feedback, because we really think it is very important to hold such a site event. Thank you.
In case you haven't heard, this is a question about the side events, and when will they be notified that the side events are being accepted?
And maybe, David, you can answer this question. Thank you.
Thank you. As you might expect, we get a lot of interest in side events, and we only have a limited number of slots. So what we do is we collect them all, and then actually the executive secretary then determines which ones will be able to grant or not. Sometimes we ask people to put them together, but you should know within a month of the meeting. So probably late next week, we should be able to confirm with those who have requested side events that they'll be able to do them or not. But I don't have a good picture yet on the whole amount that is being requested. But next week we should hear.
So if is not any other question, Diane, can you confirm if we have any other question online?
No other questions online.
Okay, so here we have one question from the room. Please, can you identify yourself for the online audience? We know you from.
Thank you very much. My name is Bernardo Rocarrey from the Permanent Mission of Peru. More than a question, I wanted just to make a comment to thank all the panelists for this presentation today on the chemical and waste agenda. It's very clear that we are having a very positive and active agenda in this last months, and we will have even more work on these topics in the following months. I just wanted also to comment that another resolution that was adopted recently in the UNEP 5.2 was to start the negotiations of international instrument to address plastic pollution. And this is also going to be a very important process that is going to start. And of course, all the support that we could have from the BRS Secretariat and also from the Minamata Secretariat is going to be very important, take into account all the experience that you are having already on different topics related to plastic. So I just wanted to again thank all the panelists and looking forward for this very active agenda on chemical and waste for the following years. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your support once again, and the active participation of the Peruvian government in all these negotiations, in particular by submitting the proposal for the resolution on the plastics treaty in UNEP. Now, if it's not any other questions, I would like to give the floor to Felix Wertley, the head of the Global Affairs section of the Federal Office for the Environment of Switzerland, to make some closing remarks. Felix, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, and also thank you to Jen and all the panelists for preparing this event today, and for your contributions. It was once more very helpful. To start, just also pick up the point that our colleague from Peru has mentioned. I think really one of the main decisions from UNEP were the plastic one. And we know that chemicals and waste will be a decisive element of the discussions. Now we know that it's about the life cycle approach, it will be about health resolution, and the chemicals and waste will play a crucial role. Just one example, we know that the recycling quote of plastic is only about 10%. And one reason is that we have so many additives in the plastic that makes it very hard and difficult to recycle plastic. And here I think we have to come together and think also how we can bring in the chemicals and waste cluster to contribute by its knowledge, by its experience, but also very concretely, for example, what is the role of the Basel Convention? Do they have to provide guidelines? Do they have to provide knowledge and so on? What can they take on also? I think that will be a very important role in the future. Just also looking a bit back, I would also like to thank Indonesia for the great hospitality for the Minamata COP. I don't know if you can see it, but I still have the gift we got there. The rucksack now is part of my daily life at the moment, wearing all my stuff in it. As it goes, that we have to be honest. Now we had a lot of success in Bali. It was great to meet people, to work together, and we also have to look at the challenges that we have faced. In particular, now there were proposed to amend the conventions, as mentioned by our colleagues from the Minamata Secretariat. We could agree on some of them. I think there was a great spirit of compromise, explaining challenges, that we could agree on them, but also we are not able to agree on certain. And at the very end, they were blocked by a single country. I think also it's quite normal in multilateral situations that if you can't agree to certain decisions, that you have to explain it well, you explain the rationale, the reasons behind, that also people can try to accommodate you. I think that also was a bit challenging this time, that perhaps many didn't fully understand what the rationale was, and I think that will also, we have to further think about that to avoid such kind of situations, and that we can also agree if such a large majority, overwhelming majority of parties would like to agree to amend the convention to make it more effective. I think also one important element when we talk about the chemical waste cluster is the collaboration between Minamata, BRS, and also under the leadership of UNEP and this task force.
As Monica has mentioned, there was a decision that supported this. And I think it was also nice to see the decision not only say they should continue, but it was even to explore ways to further strengthen the cooperation and collaboration with the BRS. So a strong wish from the memberships that this work is continued and even enhanced. I think also it was a historic number of co-sponsors for this resolution. It was 3 regional groups, the European Union, GOLAG and African Group, and some individual countries like Norway, Thailand, or Switzerland supported this. It was really a large support for it. And for sure, we have also been excited by the outcome of the UNEP. We have the Science Policy Panel, and there again, I think throughout the negotiation, and you can also see it in the resolution, the strong wish to fully include all the chemicals and waste actors in the work. This goes particularly to WHO, who is invited to play a particular role as appropriate for sure. And as also we know that many of those actors, WHO, ILO, BRS, SAICM, and so on, are based in Geneva. I think also the Geneva cluster will hopefully play a very productive and constructive and supportive role in this process. Yes, and also as mentioned, many things lay ahead of us, not only the SPP, but also the decisions of the Chemicals and Waste Omnibus Resolution. It has been presented before. I think issues of concern will be for sure very important to bring this topic forward. Also issues of concern, a topic not only related to certain conventions, but really to the entire cluster. It's also touched upon SAICM and the UNEP. So also here, how can the whole cluster benefit from this work? And then also, I think also SAICM process, also thank you Nalini for the presentation. I think it's good to feel the energy, also support by the chef for this one. I think they also, we have to create this momentum to bring this process forward, to conclude it also, to energize it again after a long time that has been also affected by the COVID situation. And I think that was also quite good to have this energy. And last but not least, for sure, we are very excited to welcome delegates for the BRS COP here in Geneva. We have also heard that the situation is almost back to normal. It is not fully yet, and we are for sure in close contact with the BRS Secretariat to ensure the safety of the delegates, the staff, and also the local population on that. One measure that is perhaps not the important one, but a bit the sad one, is also that after the discussion, the Secretariat will not have a reception this time at the BRS COP, just to avoid too much social contacts and to avoid that this could become a spreader event. But on the end of the day, I think most important at the BRS COP is the content, and we have many important discussions ahead of us. One of them will be the e-waste proposal. This is proposed by Ghana and Switzerland. It has been submitted more than a year ago and circulated to all the parties. There was a lot of outreach, a lot of webinars and bilateral discussions. We have seen that the number of co-sponsors has increased over the past months, and we are very much looking forward to discuss this further with our colleagues at the BRS COP. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Felix, and thank you very much again to the support that the Swiss government is always giving to all the MEAs and chemicals-related organizations based here in Geneva. And with this, we were saying that the Secretariat staff would never use the gavel, so this time I can do it. So I close the meeting.
Thank you to all the panelists, and thank you also to Carlos for the moderation. Thank you for all the attendees that have been with us until now, and to the little hands that have made this event possible behind the scenes. And with that, just to refer to plastics that was brought by Sandra, but also by Felix and by Peru, just to bring to attention that we will have the Geneva Big Plastic Pollutions more sessions coming up in the run-up to the preparations for the International Negotiations Committee. But we also be very busy in the next weeks with other topics in the run-up to the Stockholm Plus 50 conference, in the run-up to the UNEP Ocean conference, and in preparation on many other negotiations ongoing in Geneva and globally. And next week, there is the Geneva Health Forum at the CCG, where we will host a stand and where we are working with the chemicals MEAs and other actors, SAICM and others, to make sure we bring also these topics to the health community. Have a nice day all.